What's happening, everybody? Sean Daniel here with Guitar Control, and today we're going to look at the major scale, but in a different way that maybe you haven't quite realized how it's kind of put together yet. So definitely click the link below because I'm going to tab out everything we're talking about here. And let's get right to it. I want to talk about the major scale, all right? A lot of times people kind of roll their eyes, fall asleep when you talk about different scales and stuff, but it is definitely the most important thing to know, whether you're playing guitar, whether you're playing a trumpet, whether you're playing a flute. Anything that you can play notes with, you need to know how to play the major scale because it's the most musical thing that you can do. Most of Western music comes from it, okay? All it is 7 notes that sound good together. Now, in other videos we have on this channel, and that maybe you've seen stuff like a hand shape that does that. But I want to talk about this specifically in intervals because it can kind of open up some cool new creative ways to do it, all right? An interval is a space between 2 notes. On a guitar, we can measure an interval in frets. 2 frets would be a whole step. 1 fret would be a half step. So if I just have the 5th fret on the A string, a half step would be 5 to 6. A whole step would be 5 to 7. Now, a way to measure the major scale in intervals would be whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, okay? Again, that's just a collection of spaces between notes that give you that sound. We have a note, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Okay, so that's something you just gotta memorize, all right? However you wanna memorize whole, half, whole, half. I think, you know, if you think of it as W's for the word whole and H's for the word half, it's easy to do. 2 W's in H, 3 W's in H. Whole, half, whole, half. Memorize it. Memorize it now. Pause the video till you memorize it. I'm not even gonna speak to you again until you memorize that. All right, good, you got it. So I wanna do it starting on the A string. This is gonna be the A major scale, okay? But it's not gonna be played like this. Exact same notes, but we're gonna play like this. All right, all on 1 string. So we have a root note, A, a whole step, B, another whole step, C sharp, a half step, D, whole, half. What's next? We have 3 holes in a row. 7, 9, 11, 12, okay? One of the easier major scales, I think, to remember because you can kind of dot hop through a lot of it. Open, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 12. A, whole, half, whole, half, okay? Now, you can do that on any open string. If you want to play the D major scale, just go to an open D string and then do that same interval trick because it's good to kind of know, you know, vertically as well as horizontally. They have different advantages depending on what you're doing, okay? Now, one thing that, you know, you may not know, I didn't know this until, you know, I played for a while, was that a guitar is tuned to fourths, okay? What does that mean? That means if we have a string, the low E string, right? If we think of that as the lowest one, most guitars, it is the lowest one. The next string would be an A, okay? What that means is if you look at an E, and then you go to the 4th note in that E major scale, whole, half, takes you to the 5th fret, all right? The 5th fret is gonna be the note of the next string down. E to A, E, F, G, A. That's a 4th, okay? Just like A, B, C, D. The next string down is a 4th, D, E, F, G. D to G is a 4th, okay? So, I'm in the A major scale here doing that thing that we just did, okay? That I tapped out to. Now, what I'm gonna do is I know that because the guitar is tuned to fourths, that the string below and the string above are gonna be in the same key. They're gonna be notes in that key, right? So if I'm in the key of A, I know that whole, half, that note, whatever the 5th fret is, that ends up being a D. The D string, open, can go along with any of those notes. See? Now I'm just playing 2 strings. Okay, and it kind of thickens that up, kind of makes like little power chords out of what you're doing. And another cool thing is the string below that is gonna do the same thing, all right? A, B, C sharp, D, E is gonna be the string below, okay? Like I said, if we're going fourths, up from the lowest to the highest string. The inverse of that would be going in fifths. Like a violin, for example, is a guitar that is tuned to fifths. All right. The strings on a violin are G, D, E, and A, which is the reverse, right? G, D, E, A, D, G. So the same thing applies to the string below it, okay? Now, how that's musical, aside from just being a fun trivia fact, is I can play the open E string in between any of those notes in the major scale, all right? So instead of just going open 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 12, I can insert that open E to kind of drone would be a word, where I can just always, or pedal, come back to it. So, all I did is I played the open E string in between every note in the A major scale, all right? And by doing that, I already, and just very mechanically so, I already get a sound that's a little bit different from just kind of like a dry scale, all right? And then once you play them, instead of individually, you can play them as chords. Like that, and then you can start kind of making maybe riffs out of them. It gets a little more musical, all right? So let's do something where we're just gonna use the first couple notes here. Very bluesy, right? It's like a blues shuffle type thing. We're just going through, again, conceptually, the way we've been talking about it, are notes in the A major scale, but because that is so closely related to having an open E note, we can see this as like an E blues thing just by going through the notes. I can add any of these other notes too. Again, I'm just gonna get creative. Alright, however you want to do it, you know? Like it sound off to you, whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is that these notes are always gonna work together. You can do them on, you know, just move everything down a string. Lot of different creative uses that you can do through just really memorizing that one interval, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, and then being able to incorporate the strings around it to do that, right? Again, that blues shuffle thing really has nothing to do with the A major scale because that's in E and we're just kind of adding notes to an E thing. But conceptually, once you start thinking about it, like okay, how can I maybe start working in these different notes in a major scale, adding them to stuff you already know, like stuff about power chords, right? Any single note of these you can add as power chords. Right? And maybe even if you do end up grabbing other notes that aren't in a key, it's just one extra way that you can be creative. And it all comes from intervals, right? So thinking about how a guitar is tuned in fourths, you can experiment with different alternate tunings, but the great thing about whatever tuning that you're in, staying on one string, those intervals are always going to be the exact same, okay? So a whole step to a whole step to a half step. Open, 2, 4, 5. They're just different ways that you can see them and start incorporating other techniques that you've already learned on guitar, when really, you know, you're not really learning anything different per se, you're just kind of seeing things in a different way. And I think kind of taking one string all the way down, using your scales, using your intervals to kind of see that is a really great way to kind of open up maybe a new creative outlet to maybe form chords or maybe make riffs, stuff like that too. Just kind of thicken up your sound and just have fun rocking it out. So hopefully you learned a thing or two. And if you have any questions or comments, hit us up in the comment section. Make sure to click around on these other videos by other great instructors, myself included a lot of the time. And really, your feedback is so valuable to us. It would be great to know what kind of videos or maybe even specific song lessons you guys would like to see because we see everything. So definitely let us know what you think, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.